Just had a lead in the middle of the third quarter, and then that big Dallas run was the difference. What did you see go sideways in that stretch?
Well, I didn't think.
The Chicago Sky once again proved in this matchup against the Indiana Fever that they are simply not a factor in the current WNBA landscape, as they looked disorganized, fatigued, and broken down from the opening tip, while the Fever, although shaky in the earliest possessions, with turnovers and some difficulty generating offense, still dominated convincingly throughout the majority of the contest. And what is most fascinating is that Indiana managed this victory without their franchise centerpiece, Caitlin Clark, on the floor, which makes the outcome not only impressive but also symbolically significant because it shows a young team learning how to grow, trust one another, and create an identity that can exist both alongside and independently of their star player, which in the long run is the type of development that can carry them deeper into playoff contention and safeguard Clark from being overused or worn down across the grind of a long season. This is important because the Fever have already been criticized for leaning too heavily on Clark in games where she has to play nearly the entire contest. But if this group can continue to refine the ability to play hard and win without her, then when she is back in the rotation, it will allow her to get crucial rest stretches, avoid being run into the ground, and step into the postseason both mentally and physically sharp, which could make Indiana one of the most dangerous dark horse teams in the WNBA, especially if we consider how the league often shifts dramatically in the playoffs when depth, defensive effort, and the ability to withstand stretches without your best player become the separating factors between champions and teams that flame out. And central to this hopeful outlook for Indiana is the brilliant performance of Aari McDonald, who, from start to finish, displayed poise, defensive ferocity, and offensive IQ that seemed to unlock new layers of possibility for the Fever's lineup. And honestly, it would be devastating for this organization not to retain her long-term because she embodies the very spirit of what Indiana needs: grit on defense, relentless activity without the ball, and the confidence to make smart plays in big moments. McDonald's presence alone gave the Fever a sense of direction that had at times been missing in previous weeks. And when you add the resurgence of Kelsey Mitchell, who after a slow and troubling start to the season has rediscovered her rhythm and declared through her play that June is indeed her month, plus the continued growth of Lexi Hull, who is quietly developing into one of the league's most improved players, you begin to see a picture of a Fever team that is no longer only about Clark's transcendent shot-making and passing, but instead, about a unit that can run, defend, and share the ball, creating a dangerous balance where defenses will not be able to load up exclusively on Clark once she returns, because they will also have to account for McDonald darting through lanes, Mitchell cutting backdoor or pulling up from mid-range, Hull extending possessions with her activity, Natasha Howard facilitating from the post, and Aaliyah Boston stabilizing the interior. Early in this game, the Fever showed exactly what their blueprint could look like when Lexi Hull jumped a passing lane, forced a steal, and then immediately transformed defense into offense by pushing the ball, drawing defenders, and finding Boston for an easy bucket, and this set the tone for how the Fever would control the tempo: defense first, intensity second, and patience on offense third. And though the Sky tried to respond by going to Angel Reese in the post, Indiana's defenders, particularly Natasha Howard and Boston, were disciplined, keeping their hands straight up, refusing to foul, and essentially daring Reese to finish plays that she has not yet consistently proven she can convert at the professional level, which led to her posting an abysmal shooting percentage and a staggering -20 plus-minus on the night, further highlighting the gulf in execution between the two teams. This defensive intensity carried through the first half, where even as Indiana occasionally looked stagnant offensively, committing turnovers or missing clean looks, they never lost control of the game because they smothered Chicago's attempts to build momentum, forcing turnovers, contesting shots, and turning live ball stops into transition chances that became increasingly easy to convert as the Sky's energy dwindled. A particularly telling sequence came when Kelsey Mitchell, coming off a high screen, used a sharp step back to leave her defender completely lost and nailed a smooth mid-range jumper. A shot that not only extended the Fever's lead but symbolized her growing comfort in shouldering offensive responsibility whenever Clark is absent. Something Indiana desperately needs because she is the one player outside of Clark who has the handles, quickness, and creativity to manufacture points out of nothing when the offense bogs down. Plays like this, from Mitchell, combined with Hull's relentless effort, whether diving for loose balls, putting the ball on the floor with newfound confidence, or finishing through contact around the rim and McDonald's high IQ movements, such as her brilliant off-ball cut that circled all the way from the baseline to the opposite wing for an open three-pointer, reveal a Fever team that is learning to trust the little things, the spacing, the screen setting, the smart cuts, and the selfless passes that turn a stagnant possession into a beautiful offensive flow. And when you place this growth against the backdrop of Chicago's defensive incompetence, where backdoor cuts by Mitchell were left completely unguarded, off inbounds plays, offensive rebounds by Natasha Howard were conceded without a fight, and rotations collapsed into confusion, it becomes clear why this game felt more like a statement than just another mid-season win. Because the Fever didn't just beat the Sky, they dismantled them in a way that exposed Chicago's lack of identity, while simultaneously showcasing Indiana's evolving one. And we cannot overlook the psychological value of this victory either. Because when a team that has been labeled as dependent on its rookie superstar manages to produce arguably its best defensive game of the year in her absence, it shifts the narrative and injects belief into the locker room, telling every player that their role matters, their effort matters, and that winning can and must be a collective endeavor, which in turn will only make Clark's job easier when she returns. Because she will be entering a lineup full of players who now know what it takes to grind out possessions, who have gained confidence in their ability to score, and who understand that defensive intensity is not optional but the foundation of everything. This is why defense is at the root of Indiana's potential success. The steals, the deflections, the contests, the communication, they all create the conditions for fast break points, for rhythm threes, for layups in transition, and for those moments where confidence builds, shots start falling, and the game tilts irreversibly in your favor, which is precisely what unfolded in the second half when the Fever finally found their groove and blew the game open while the Sky stumbled aimlessly. The combination of McDonald hitting threes, Boston facilitating from the post, Howard punishing mismatches, Cole slashing, and Mitchell scoring from all three levels gave Indiana a multi-pronged attack that Chicago had no answers for. And when you pair that with Reese's offensive struggles and a Sky defense that looked disinterested at times, you understand why this matchup ended an embarrassment for Chicago and a celebration for Indiana, who not only climbed back to .500 at 4-4 but also built momentum for the games ahead, with the looming return of Clark promising to elevate this evolving machine into something truly formidable. Because when she comes back rested, sharper, and supported by teammates who have grown in her absence, the Fever could very well be looking at a frighteningly complete team heading into the heart of the season.
I didn't think our attention to detail on defense was very good. They got loose for some easy ones. We started fouling, getting to the free throw line, and
the Indiana Fever's most recent game provided an intriguing case study in resilience, development, and adaptation, because while Caitlin Clark was still sidelined, the team found ways to execute offensively, defend with passion, and build an identity that extended beyond their reliance on their superstar rookie. And what stood out immediately was the way their offense functioned through the classic pick-and-roll action between Ari McDonald and Aaliyah Boston, where two defenders were so preoccupied with McDonald's quickness that Boston was freed with a pump fake and an open lane, drawing the necessary help that she then calmly punished by making the smart extra pass to Natasha Howard for a mid-jumper, a possession that encapsulated how Indiana can be effective without Clark. Good spacing, correct reads, decisive cutting, and making the right decisions at the right time. And while it is obvious that the Fever are 10 times better when Clark is on the court, they are at least learning how to be competent without her, how to survive stretches where she is resting, and how to give her the freedom later in the season to play fresher and sharper, which will be vital for playoff contention. And this growth becomes clear again in the very next possession where Lexi Hull, playing with tenacity and improved technique, shuffled her feet defensively, forced a miss, and after Chicago secured an offensive rebound and tried to go back up with Angel Reese, Howard once again demonstrated that against Reese you do not need anything fancy. Just put your hands straight up and refuse to foul, because Reese has been wildly inefficient, missing more than half of her layups. And Indiana turned that stop into a post touch for Boston, who on the other end absolutely cooked Reese, showing fans the difference between an elite big who can finish with touch, strength, and footwork, and one who still struggles to convert even the most basic interior looks. And while Boston only took 7 shots in the game, largely because Clark was not there to consistently feed her in pick-and-roll actions, she was as efficient as ever, making the most of every touch and reinforcing that she can dominate whenever given the chance. Then, when McDonald drove into the paint and kicked out to Hull for a contested 3 in the corner, The Fever's growth in confidence became undeniable because Hull, statistically the best three-point shooter in the league right now, drilled it with poise, and her entire game has blossomed. From her shot mechanics to her rebounding, defense, and ability to cut off the ball, making her not only a candidate for most improved player but even an outside all-star consideration given that she is elite at several valuable categories: shooting, defense, hustle, off-ball movement that coaches respect when selecting reserve.